You ready?
I'm ready.
Would you say that you're prepared?
I have a post-it note out and my pencil sharpener and pencil.
Oh my
I'm
god.
so prepared.
Oh my god, what a studious man. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Claire's Based Talkathon. Unfortunately, last week I was not able to get an episode out, so my current plan is to get 2 episodes out this week, so it's really one of 2 episodes for this week. And today we have a return guest, Simon. Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. You know, it can, you know, when you're, I didn't think before starting the podcast, you know, like doing this regularly, that it would be this difficult to find guests. Because I'm like, everyone likes talking their mind, right? But god damn, it's all just scheduling. So it's really great to have you here.
Yeah. I can relate to the scheduling, but...
Right. There's so many people who are like, you contact them and you're like, okay, can we do this time? And they're like, yes. And then it just doesn't work out. And sometimes it's my fault, sometimes it's their fault, sometimes it's no one's fault. But, you know, that's a little sneak, that's a behind the scenes for y'all. Anyways, that's not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is that I have a topic in mind. But Simon doesn't know what it is, so he's going to have to figure it out through a little word puzzle. The word is 7 letters long. Yeah.
Okay.
I've decided to give you a bit of a challenge. You guess a 7-letter word. If it's not the topic, I'll tell you which letters are in the actual topic and if they are in the correct position. So take a second to think about that. If you have any feedback for this episode, let me know in the comments. Also, you know, likes and subscribes are always going to be helpful. Additionally, I have a TikTok at Claire Theswitch on TikTok. Alright, do you have a first guess?
Oh, I had an initial guess, but I counted it and it was like 8 rather than 7. So,
Is there a way to modify that word to make it 7?
Oh, I could tell you what the word was.
Yeah.
How much I can't change it into 7. It was research. Like, there's no way to make that into 7.
SEARCH. No, yeah, I can't, yeah.
Okay, so... I think the smartest way to go about this is, like, what you would go for a topic with me.
Right, because that's kind of the meta it's going to become, is that, I don't necessarily... I try to keep it varied with the topics, but it's going to become predictable at a point.
Okay, I have my first guess.
Yes.
Writing.
Fuck, man! The puzzle is supposed to be longer than this. The puzzle is supposed to take longer than 8 fucking seconds. God damn it.
Well, no, because I was like, oh, what did we do a bunch in middle school? And then I was like, oh yeah, the sugar glider that I killed. In a story, not in reality.
Yeah, Simon is actually wanted for serial sugar glider murder.
Look, I think I read the Guardian of the Cool Kids, like, books as a kid too much, and I was just like, ooh, they're just a yummy little snack, and now I'm like, what was going on in my brain?
Okay, anyways. Yeah, so, if you didn't, we kind of started talking off topic there, but the topic is writing, for y'all. The topic is writing. I'm not published, but I am, you know, a writer. I'm planning on publishing in different ways. I've written plays, I've written poems, I've written short stories, and I've had a lot of different experiences with writing throughout my life. So I wrote really young, wrote in, middle school, like we were talking, high school, and now that I'm out of high school, I'm writing again. Just as the other day, I was writing something, a story, and which I'm not going to give too many details about because it's something I'm probably going to publish publicly. But regardless, I want to.
I think perhaps the definition of publishing is to publish it publicly, but
Shut the fuck up. But you know what I mean, where it's like upload, like presenting it. Because like you can like present that kind of thing, but then just have it be like, oh, I shared it with friends. That's not like an actual publication. Like there's a legal definition of publication, and like the point is that I think I might actually try to get something official. But essentially, like, there is this sort of, when people talk about art, it so frequently is from the perspective of an audience member, and I want to kind of avoid, or at least not focus too heavily on that today. Instead, talk a little bit more of the perspective from an artist and what it's like to write and what the process is like.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so right off the bat, like tell me a little bit about your relationship with writing.
Okay, I'm gonna be real here.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the last piece of fiction writing I did was. Because I don't think that I did anything in November for NaNoWriMo.
Right, and I'm not specifically even talking about nonfiction writing is also totally applicable here, because
I do a lot of nonfiction writing for my class. Not a lot, I guess, but like I do a decent amount for my classes, and then I'm like, oh, do I want to do any more? Not really.
Right. And for context for the people at home, you're doing journalism, right?
I actually haven't really started journalism yet. I'm in 2 classes right now, and I've taken 1 before.
Okay.
So I haven't written an article for school yet, but I was looking at my stuff from high school, and I have like 18. So.
Okay. So it's pretty safe to say your experience with writing.
Yeah.
And like, I think that just starting from like the basic, like starting from the simplest stuff. For me, whenever I'm writing, it's always a very polar thing in that, like, I'm either, like, I couldn't write right now and would be really upset if I were forced to, or I'm like, I'm going to write for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have that experience? Because I know, well, I mean, for school, obviously, you're going to have to force yourself to do some writing.
Yeah, I'd say so. I did, like, I'm now remembering, I did a couple, like, short things in December. And I was like, this is all that I'm spending my time on. So I spent, like, probably, like, 3 hours, like, crafting this, like, 500-word short story.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, editing it and making it all look good and stuff.
Right.
But then I haven't done anything since, so.
Yeah, and I would have been in the same boat, honestly, if I hadn't started writing within the past few months. Because I really, I'm very sporadic with my writing. That's something I'm working on. For example, I'm now journaling, which, it's not necessarily about, like, creative stuff, but it gives me an opportunity to write in a way where I'm expressing myself, even if it is ultimately just back to myself, and getting my thoughts on paper. And that process, to me, is what's really valuable. Like presenting a piece is it can be very satisfying and fun and exciting. I know I actually wrote a play for a class that was basically gotten to it was submitted for a playwriting competition and almost won. It almost or not won. I shouldn't say won. I mean,
you said almost.
It said it almost got into. It almost got presented in the competition. Essentially, the way it works is that there wasn't one winner. It was that there were a few winners, and the few winners had their pieces performed by professionals. And unfortunately, I did not get the opportunity, but the person who was coordinating it told me personally that it was just due to restraints in terms of size, and that if it were larger, I would have been next up. So, and it's a piece that I'm very proud of. That's the thing that's big. It's like it was fun to write, and I'm proud of the final product. And
audience, listeners out there, are you ever like, wow, I know so many cool people? I'm over here mouth dropped, oh my gosh, what?
Well,
that's so cool.
It is very cool. I was very proud of it, and it was also a really good learning experience, because that play that I wrote, while it was fun to write, it was also something I never would have wrote without this environment I was in. I was in a playwriting unit, and the teacher had organized this to be like, we're going to write plays in a very specific way. And if you write a good enough one, we'll have it performed by professional actors. And so there were very high stakes, And my sibling did that program a few times, and had at least one performance that was one play that was written and turned into semi-professional production. And these are very short plays, but it was awesome. It was so cool. It was a very subversive piece about family stuff and murder and it's just a lot of really freaky stuff going on. Arson. It was a very intentionally disturbing piece. And it was very shocking, but people really liked it. And I was inspired by that, and that kind of stuff doesn't come out of nowhere, though. That stuff comes from serious dedication. And in my case, we were given a specific assignment called the Time Turner. No, Time Twister. Time Turner is Harry Potter. I don't know how I mixed those up. Time Twister, the way it works is that the story is presented non-chronologically, but not just it's backwards. It was the first scene is the present, the next scene is one day in the future, and then the third scene would be a day, yesterday. And then the next scene would be 2 weeks from now, and then the next scene is 2 weeks, earlier, and so it's constantly running back and forth. But there's also no obvious scene transitions, so the audience has to themselves not only figure out the time scale, but also when those time scale switches occur. It's amazing, an amazing concept. If you ever need a writing prompt, that's a great place to start. Thinking about your piece, and just fucking forcing yourself to do something weird, because that's the kind of stuff that gets me really motivated. Like, have you ever had that experience where it's like when you're trying to write and it nothing comes out, and then when you put a limitation, you can write?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, because
I feel like I always go in with like kind of an idea of what I want to do. So I don't know. For me, it's like if I'm just trying to get words on the page, then I'm just like, oh, here's this random idea that just came to me. Let's like write it down for like where the scene's gonna go next. But then if I'm like looking back and editing it, I'm like, why did I do that? So limiting myself would probably be good.
Right. I think, yeah, like I oftentimes write down ideas I have, even if they're super unrealistic. Like one time I was like, oh, here's an idea for like a virtual reality game. I don't have the money to buy a virtual reality console, and I don't have the time to learn how to develop a game for that. It's so beyond my capabilities. And I'm also totally not like a person that people would consult for video game ideas and actually get credit for it. You know? Like, there's no value in me sharing it to me. It would just be a stolen idea at that point. And so, it's like, there are things like that where I write it down and it's like, later I'm like, yeah, that's silly. But when I'm like sitting down and I'm like, alright, I want to write something, for me, what always gets me started is that limitation. So, for example, the play that, again, I'm probably going, this is the play at some point I'm probably going to present at some point publicly. But like the way that the time fucks up really weird is it kind of like, it forced me to like really think about what the structure is going to be and how to make it all intentional and how to turn something that's something that is presented to me as a limit and converting it into something powerful. I think a super good example of this is in poetry when you have things like iambic pentameter and complicated rhyme schemes. Like, when I'm writing something and I'm like, oh, I don't really know how to write this story, I'm just kind of like, I'm just like barfing details onto a page. Like, having that, like a strict poem format helps me a lot. Like, I wrote a poem that, originally I was like, oh, I'll write a short story about this idea. And I was like, oh, I can make this iambic pentameter, and it made it so much better. It would have been way shittier without it, because it allowed me to focus on the things that really, really mattered. And so it's kind of this process of kind of forcing yourself into a situation where you have to write in a very particular way, and it allows you to pick out what you really like from your writing. Because it's essentially a way to skip a step in editing. That's the way I would put it. Where it's like when you write something without any limitations, and then you go and edit, you're like, okay, we need to bring this back a little bit. You know, like, and that's always I fucking hate editing my own writing. It's so
I know.
bad.
I'm like, okay. I personally am like, I love editing other people's works. Like, part of why I'm going into journalism is so that I can have that career opportunity open to me. But yeah,
Like a professional
I just, like, hate
editor.
editing my own stuff. I'm like, I already wrote it. What else do I need to do? And I'm like, okay, logically, I need to edit it and take it back home, like you said. But I just hate doing that part for my own work because I have to decide what edits to make.
Right.
Sure, good, but then I have to do them.
Right.
Disgusting.
Yeah. It's like it feels like you are, and I think part of what, for me at least, is it feels like you're infringing upon your original act of writing, because writing is an action. It's not you are like, I will write, and then it happens, and then it's like a single instance in time where it's like, I wrote a book, between all the different drafts and the pauses and the sleeping and coming back to it, seeing things with fresh eyes. There are so many times in in the writing of even something really short that it's you're coming at it with a different perspective. And I think during the editing process, for me, it's like, yes, there are issues I made and like logical things I didn't cover, but also, god damn, like this feels so much more genuine in its unedited form. Like this was what I did. This was the writing I created, and so like, I mean, do you have a method for working around that sort of like nervousness for editing, or do you just have other people edit your shit?
I actually, because I hate the like revising process so much, I've written like one book from 2019, like 60,000 words. I wrote it, I sent it off to a couple friends. I think they gave me feedback like a few months later, and then I just haven't looked at it again. So
wait, okay, 60,000 words? Damn.
Yeah, it was. Look, school wasn't important. Life wasn't important.
All that matters is the word count.
Yeah. Well, I actually loved this for me because what I did is I was like, oh, I have Halloween candy. And so for every X amount of words I write, or like I reach the 5,000 mark and then the 10,000 mark, etc., right, I get to have like one piece of candy. And then there were some days, like I wouldn't eat the candy the day before that I'd earned. And so there would be some days where I'd have like 6 pieces of candy, and I'm like, you know what? I earned this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My sibling does a similar thing, with M&Ms when they're reading textbooks. They got M&M at the end of every line. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah, I think in the future what's gonna... I've been wanting to do this, I just haven't, like, I guess had the motivation or the ideas to, like, do this, but I might, is, like, just spend, like, a few months where, like, every week I write a short story between, like, 500 and, like, 1,500 words, and then I, like, edit it. Yeah. And so, by the end of, like, the 3 months or whatever, I'll have had, like, a lot of practice in, like, going back and editing stuff, and I generally write, like, longer fiction, and so I think having the practice moments with shorter fiction is going to be helpful.
Oh, definitely. I think that, like, writing is at its worst when you are like, I'm going to force myself to write something that I'm banking everything on. Like, I'm writing my manifesto even though I don't want to. Like, you need those small, non-consequential works that you can look at yourself and reflect inward on. Because I've had like, I have like a whole backlog of stories I've written in various forms, and like a significant majority of them are unfinished. And I think that comes from that sort of like, it comes from an overcommittal,
Yeah.
And so like, what's helped me is just being like, when I have a story and it's getting like tedious to write, I'm like, I don't know how to finish this. I take that and be like, okay, that idea could not be stretched out that far, and it's helped me a lot. Like, I've been, like, when I was writing that poem, I was like, the whole premise was very simple, and I was originally planning it to be, like a 500 or so word story, but I was like, that's not going to work, and so it ended up being like less than 100, like significantly less than 100. And it worked way better because I wasn't forcing myself into this like massive committal, and like, you know, allowing yourself to indulge in that process of starting a story, ending the story, editing the story, and then not touching it again is important. That's something valuable. And that's another thing, is that like when you're writing a piece, do you like do you ever like when you're writing a piece, what's your do you focus more on how the audience will read it, or how you feel about it yourself?
I usually, let's see, because I have written fan fiction in the past, but I think, and so like that stuff is like quote unquote published, right?
Right, right. Make sure you give us a link at the end.
Oh,
of the
I'm
podcast.
not giving you a link.
Oh, give me a link. Give me a link. Is it on AO3?
Yeah.
Yes, dude. Based. Anyways.
Look, every time someone says that they use Wattpad, I'm like, please switch over to AO3. Anyway. So, like, even with that stuff, where, like, it is going to be published, and, like, I've published stuff before, and, like, people read it, and, like, I get comments or whatever, I'm still not focusing on, like, how people will perceive it so much as, like, how I feel writing it, which is interesting.
I 100% feel the same way. I feel especially that way, which kind of off the topic, but with music, when I'm making music, I think about how I'm thinking about how I'm listening to it and how other people will listen to it. But I only ever listen to that second part with any credibility after I'm done with the project. And that's what I try to do with my writing as well. Like, I'm writing something, if it feels good in my head, then I'll keep it. And I'm not going to care if someone else thinks that there's something dumb about it. Because ultimately, I mean, you're the only person who can truly understand your own. Like, you can't tell you. It's impossible to communicate to someone else like, oh yes, here is my full concept of what writing is good and bad, so that when you're writing, you can account for that. You know? Like, reading a review will never tell you all the information you need to know so that you can write more stuff and perfectly account for all that. Especially with the biases of communication being like, you know, when you're writing a review, you know, or someone is writing a review about you, even just like a fucking comment, there's often, you know, there often is that accounting for, you know, the audience. You know, it's like if I'm, you know, people don't like, I think in the modern day, reviews are written for the audience and not for the creator. You know, they're written for the audience to learn something about the piece, and not for the author to learn for themselves. And
yeah, I also like, in regards to like AO3, like, it's very odd, and like it almost breaks like a quote unquote rule of the website to like come in with like a critique in the comments. So like I don't really get critiques on any of the like shorter work that I do. So I just like, does it give me an opportunity to grow just like writing it? Yes, but I'm not having like a second pair of eyes most of the time.
Right. And I think that's like, I think that's what's valuable about making writing, or at least that's what's valuable about long-term projects, because when you are like, all right, I'm going to write a story, that's what's happening with the story I was writing the other day. Was I started writing and jotting down the idea. I was first just thinking about it, and I jotted down some ideas, and now I'm writing basically a really rough version of the story, with like completely different tensing than I'm planning and different framework, but like just get like basic dialogue and setting and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
coming back to it, there's so many small details that I'm able to improve on, and it's like that's like the value I think of those long projects. It's like once you get to the point where you can consistently challenge yourself with short stories and like get into a cycle where you create something, you present it, and then you're able to look back on it and think this is something I can change, not change it, be okay with it, and then bring that information into a new project. Once you've got that cycle down, then you can apply that to a long form project where then when you come back to it, you're actually going to implement those changes. Like that's I think like that's like my current goal is to try and get into that loop where I'm working on projects and I'm like I'm confident enough to come back to them and say, all right, I know what I want to change about this.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, part of what like has held me back from like the editing and revision process is I'm realizing now that like I only write when I feel like I have to, as in like I just have all these ideas and my brain's like you have to write them down, you have to like go through with them. And like I that means that I'm not as like intentional about like what I'm writing and like the way that I'm writing it. So,
Right. Like how like when once you've written it and then it's time to edit, the passion of that new idea is gone.
mm,
Like is that accurate or
yeah.
yeah? Because I think that's a big thing as well, and it's like that's what short stories are really good at. Is like you can write it with the passion and get it all out at once, present it, look back on it, say, okay, here are some things that I was blinded by. I was
Hmm.
blindsided by, in my fiery passion to get this idea into the world and forgot that doors exist or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many movies where you'll see, like, a character who's like, we gotta tell this dude that he's in danger. It's like, just fucking call them.
I know.
It's like, so many movies have to be super convoluted about the way that communication is. And it's like, write a story where people can text each other. I dare you. Like,
Okay, they're getting more and more common. I love books that have texting in them, and like the way that they format it is always so interesting. And just seeing it portrayed like on the screen in books, like
texting.
yeah.
Yeah. I like also like it feels like the modern version of chapters that are written by individual characters.
Mm,
Because ultimately, it's like when you're writing a character's dialogue, you have to take a step out of your own writing voice. And that's something that's very
mm-hmm,
difficult is to say you have to say like how do I write? Now how would this character write? Then you write like them and then edit it like they would edit it. You know? Like
mm-hmm.
it's such a different process. Um, but I think that's like it also can be really immersive when done well. When a character expresses their like their duality in the way they communicate, where like in person they're very very quiet and then they'll text you fucking for hours and it's like, oh, so you don't like talking. And it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
actually that quietness has nothing to do with the actual person you are. Personality wise, it's just like a physical thing where you just don't really like talking to people in person. It can be stuff like that where it's like you don't have to say that someone's awkward at conversations, you can show it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another big thing is the show versus tell. You can tell me that a guy is, that this monster is scary, but can you show it to me?
Mm-hmm.
There was a great writing exercise. I can't remember the app, but if I remember, I'll try and find it. It was this thing about writing a monster. It's like, yeah, you can write about the sharp teeth and the creepy hands and the thick fur, but you have to throw in things that scare that are just unsettling. And the example was a line describing a monster saying, "The monster has your brother's eyes." And that's the line. And it's such a great example because it's about like it's like you have to take your work with like when you're writing something and you imagine it, you can describe the emotions, but sometimes you can't describe why you have those emotions, and that's the important part to master is like, okay, why is this robot inhuman? You can say this robot doesn't really act like a person does. Okay, how does a person act? It's like cite your fucking sources, dude. When you say a robot is robotic, everyone's gonna do the fucking like loud blinking like fucking what? Or then when you describe a robot as stiff jointed, as monotone, when you describe it as being it has a disregard for most conversations and living creatures, it just like you can write dialogue where there's a fucking there's a cat in the street eating a mouse, and one of the human characters can be like, damn, sucker had an unlucky day, and the robot will be like, statistically speaking, it's extremely likely for a mouse to be eaten by rats in this city. And that tells you so much more about that robot than any fucking single adjective could. I'm a robotic robot. Like, of course you are, But being like, seeing like a fucking, and it can be even more extreme than that. You can take that and you can use that as foreshadowing. You can have a scene where there's a kid in a fucking burning building, and it's like, if I were to enter the building, I would have a 40% chance of losing, receiving significant damage to my processor. I will not enter the building, and it's like 40%, dude. It's like that's how like risky something has to be for you to just like, nah, I can let that human die. Like you have some form of more, like another, this is like, it's all about this concept of like, when you're writing something, you're trying to get your ideas on paper, right? And there's always going to be another layer that you can unpack. And the question is, how far can you go? How far can you get there? And I think that's why there's so many like popular absurd pieces, Like absurdity is like a perfect way to express that, because it's like, in this world everyone is living their lives as these like they're these stars that are like light years away from each other, but also somehow all talk to each other, and they're all like, they have tea parties, and there's like a dinosaur man who's like half like the bottom half is human legs, and he like is a waiter, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? But at the same time, when those characters have an interaction, it can get past a lot of those notions and and like issues. You actually do have to start from scratch. What does a star look like when it's nervous? What does the dinosaur waiter do when it's feeling excited? Because we're not talking about humans anymore. We're getting further and further detached from the actual world, and allowing yourself, and it's about those limitations. It's like you're limiting yourself by saying, no, I can't just say someone's smiling, because obviously everyone knows what like a smile looks like, and can pick up on what it means. But when a star starts shining a little bit brighter, you can teach people that means that that's essentially a smile. When the shimmer of the star starts fading away, it's feeling sad, it's feeling disheartened. And that kind of stuff is like what makes writing so fun, is creating these worlds without rules and filling it in. Yeah. And like and also, not to mention, like there's also like historical stuff, and this applies as well to nonfiction. But like when you think about writing from a perspective of the reader, it's always going to be like, it's always such a different experience. Fiction and nonfiction writing are like one of the big fundamental differences. Is like you care so much more about the audience, and that's why I think some like big budget productions can feel really flat. It's like fundamentally those things weren't designed because the artist had an idea and wanted to share it. They are making Morbius, They're making fucking Minions 8. They don't care about like the process of it. All they care about is the budget.
Money. Yeah.
It's and then on the other hand, when you have like a work that's supposed to be nonfiction and all they can think about is themselves, then you end up with like fucking Ben Shapiro stuff, where it's like a piece that's written being like, I'm very smart and I know everything, and it's proven by a bunch of other people who say that they know everything as well, and to have no, and they all cite each other, and no one's actually has good information. And it's like, no, you have to think about your audience. You have to think about the people who are gonna doubt you. It's like when you are, the burden of information is on the writer.
Yeah,
and like
I feel like recently I've seen some like good nonfiction books that do think about like the audience and like who's gonna read this and like how are they gonna be approaching this subject, whereas like a textbook is much different.
I think a textbook it's like a perfect example of that, where it's like they're writing and it's not really fun to write. No one's like, yes, my passion is to write the same thing that's been written 80 times. But instead of 4x, it's 5x. Like, no. No one enjoys that.
It's
very few people. Yeah, literally, it's like, alright, who's gonna rewrite the fucking algebra book? But also at the same time, it's not really written for people either, because the audience doesn't really want to read it.
Yeah.
And in that case, it's like it's almost it's reaching a third point, where it's like a third focus point. So it's not focusing on the writer, it's not focusing on the reader, it's focusing on the impact, like like the like someone's writing something, like a textbook, because they know that it will have an impact, and they want it to have that specific impact, so they write it a specific way. And so it's like it's not it's not to the audience's benefit that, you know, there's a fucking boring ass section where they explain to you what a mitochondria is for the 8 billionth time. You know, like it's to provide a specific service. And so, like, in your writing, what would you say your focus is?
I mean, probably on, like, just, like, how I want the story to be. But, again, I think that focusing on the audience, for me, is something that I would do in, like, revisions and stuff, which I just haven't gotten to.
Right. Because, like, in the beginning, you're thinking about the immediate thoughts you have. You're like, all right, idea is solidified. Make that idea real. Done. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, shit, we have to think about, you know, the fact that this sentence doesn't make any sense, and this character's name is only brought up in the 8th chapter of 9 chapters. You know, I get those little things that you miss in the writing process that aren't necessary for someone writing it, but are necessary for someone reading it.
Yeah.
And
what would you say it's like for you?
Hmm?
Like, where is your focus usually?
I'd say it's right in between my personal feelings and service. Because a lot of the times I write stuff because I have a specific question to answer that I don't have an answer for. And that's something I learned in playwriting, is, you know, where it's like in playwriting, they're like, when you write a play, if you have an answer to a question, no one's gonna like it. You know, you don't teach people math with a play. That's like full service, where you're like, what's x plus, you know, if, you know, 4 minus 1 equals x, what is x? Oh, whoa, like, that's not fucking interesting. That's not gonna be thought-provoking, you know. And, or, you know, telling someone 2 plus 2 equals 5 is just like, you know, it's just like, I disagree with that, okay? You know, like, that's why, like, political messages and stuff are so difficult to nail, because people are gonna feel like, you know, they're not gonna feel invested in a story that feels like it's giving you an answer rather than asking one. Asking a question, I should say. So when you're asking a question, it's always like, as the writer, you don't know the answer. You know, like, what is the way to approach a situation? How do we address an issue? How do we talk about an issue? Why should we do this thing? Why shouldn't we do this thing? Should we be doing this? And those kinds of questions, those big open-ended questions, are great for story writing. And so I always try to incorporate that in the story, because it allows me to, you know, even if I don't really plan on publishing it, it allows me to think about those things. And I have a lot of fun with that. You know, that's why I have this podcast. I love talking about shit like that. It's just like vague, crazy concepts. And like when you have a like political stuff, for example. Like, there's a lot of political things right now where, you know, it's divisive, in the sense that, like, it's not just that people disagree, you know? It's not just that people want separate things. It's like, oh, we all agree that we need to do something about this. You know, it's like within a certain space. Like, we all should act on this. But everyone disagrees on how. So then you can write a story about that, where it's like, how would you, you know, how do you deal with population of morally ignorant robots. You know, like that could be like a pseudo version of your question, where like the real question would be like, what do you do when people don't care? What happens when you have a lot of people in your population that don't care about others, that don't care about certain groups of living people? Like that robot story, and here's again writing prompt for y'all. It's robots and they don't care about human lives, but they protect each other. They'll sacrifice for themselves to help other robots, but they don't give a shit about humans. And it would be a perfect way to talk about discrimination and segregation. How do you convince a robot that, hey, what you're doing is good, but it needs to be applied more. It's like, yes, good job, you helped someone. Now help humans. And the robot will be like, shut the fuck up. Like, it doesn't care. And it's like, how do you convince a robot to act morally and to a more practical extent? How do you convince someone to change their morals? To change their view on morality? I don't know the answer to that question. Like there's all these studies that are like, when you present someone with information and then present them information that contradicts it, they will not believe you. There's so many studies like that. Like, great example. The study was, they presented a bunch of university students with suicide notes. Some of them were real, some of them were fake. And the students were asked to figure out which ones are real, which ones are fake. They were given fake results, some of them being extremely good, like 70-80% accurate, while others being super low, being less than average, like 20-30%. Then the students were told that those original scores were fake and asked what they thought that their score was, given what they knew, given that original score they were told was false. And the students who were told they scored high thought they scored a little bit less, but not by much. And the people who were told they scored low thought they still scored low, but just a little bit more. And what if I told you that was all fake?
And did they flip-flop it, or was it just random?
No, that whole study was fake. I made that out.
I'd be like, Claire, why are you lying to me? But also...
Yeah. I know, it's a convincing lie, but it sounds true. And
yeah.
It's like, it's actually a real study. I lied again. Because that's an example of the study tricking you and proving its point. By presenting you with information and then saying, it's a lie, you can potentially find more research to support it. When you say, oh, there's this cool study that says that, that first impressions, mean a lot. It's like, really? It's like, not really. It's like, oh, I thought that would be real. And it's like, just kidding, it is real. And then they're like, huh? I haven't got to successfully work. But the idea is that there was like a meta study about these kinds of studies. And it literally found, like, first impressions are super hard to change. And so, like, that can be a great topic for a story. Like, rather than saying, you have to do this to change people's minds. This is how you change the hearts and minds of a generation. You say, how do you do that? Because no one fucking knows. If we knew, politicians wouldn't be necessary. People could all just agree on shit because everyone would have amazing rhetoric. And, like, it's just one of those things where it's like, that's like such a great place to start with a story. And, like, it doesn't have to be this, like, massive thing, It can just be a little trip. It can be a little adventure in writing. And you step away from it and say, oh, I ended up writing this story. The metaphor of robots kind of fell apart when they started shooting lasers out of their eyes. you know. Like, that's a thing that can happen. You're like, I'm writing a story where something is a metaphor, and then the metaphor falls apart. So now I have to consider that in the future, you know? And like that, you know, it allows your focus of thinking about, like, if your focus is what you think of the story, it allows you to cultivate that focus to be, to avoid editing. You know, your instinct will become more refined and palatable to, you know, audiences, and be able to better express them, and, you know, be able to serve a purpose. So yeah, I'm like, I love writing so much, and I'm very and like, technically this isn't like an announcement because nothing's official, but there is writing stuff in my portfolio coming to theaters not theaters, but you know, I will probably be uploading some writing soon, and it's going to be very exciting. So and you know, it's something that I'm probably gonna ask you for help with editing.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah, so
the way in which I love editing.
Yeah, I'll pay
Not
you.
my own stuff, but
I'll pay you in Dunkin' Donuts gift cards.
Oh, I was gonna say you can pay me in that cheesy Chex Mix stuff.
Oh my god.
I'll accept that as payment.
Yes, it's fucking so good. I've been meaning to make more of that. That's another thing. You know, like, that's different topic. Cooking. I could talk about cooking for a really long time. But anyways, that's about it for today's episode. But before we wrap it up, I want to ask you a quick question, Simon.
Yes.
So you're in college, right? Do you have like savings right now? Are you like saving money?
Yeah.
Ooh, really nice. That's really good to hear.
I have a job.
Yeah, that means you're getting busy. Well, you're lucky because you're actually in the minority of people. 69% of adult Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Do you know that? Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty disappointing, also, considering how fucking expensive like healthcare stuff can be in an emergency. But luckily, I have a potential, you know, way to help out with that. It's a mobile banking service called Yotta, YOTTA. So again, it's like, you know, it's an app you can download. That is, it's a banking service that offers savings accounts that have sweepstakes in addition to normal interest rates. So essentially, every $25 you put in, you'll get a ticket that gives you a chance to win $10 million every week. So, and because there's no required fees and it's fully FDIC insured, you don't have to lose any money. That $25 will give you one ticket every week, and it'll never go away. So, if that sounds interesting to you, use code SWITCH while making your account, and you'll get 100 bonus tickets. So for your first drawing, you'll have 100 chances at $10 million at $10 million, or a Tesla. You might even get a Tesla. That's actually one of the prizes. They've actually, and I checked it out because, you know, they're not directly paying me for this. They'll send me tickets and stuff if I get referrals, but they're not directly paying me, so I had to do some research, and they actually have given away 2 Teslas. They've given away like $4 million total and 2 Teslas. So they're fucking serious. It's serious as hell. And they have like this whole system with an insurance provider, like our insurance partner, to make sure that the drawings are all fair. So, yeah. It's got the Claire Theswitch seal of approval. But yeah, so once you have an account, there's also a pool system. So if if the random, if the chance at 10 million seems a little bit not so enticing, the pools can help with that. It makes it so that you earn a percentage of what the pool gets based on how many tickets you put in. So if you put in 5 tickets and none of them make money, someone else puts in 5 tickets and they earn $10, you'll split it evenly. And so it brings down a lot of that randomness while still having the fun, presentation of being like, "Cool, are you gonna win a bunch of money?" It's a very like a gamified savings account, and so it keeps you like aware of your money. And I recommend it for that. If you're ever like, I put money away into a fucking bag 2 years ago and forgot, then Yada might be something that would, Yada help me with that. So again, YOTTA on basically every app store that I know of. Use code SWITCH, SWITCH, for the referral code when signing up, or as the password to get into the official Claire Theswitch pool. I don't know what makes it official other than I made it. But yeah, that is about it for today's episode. Subscribe, like, comment, follow me on TikTok, check me out on SoundCloud as well. So Claire Theswitch on all my platforms. And Simon, I don't think you have anything to plug, do you?
No, I have nothing to plug.
Unless you're gonna give us that AO3 link.
I don't think I will.
What? Oh my god, there's no way. Wow. Can you give us like a brief concept of what it is, though? Like, what's the foulest thing you've written?
What's the what?
The most foul thing you've written.
Foul?
Yeah. How foul does it get, dude?
I mean, there's not like blatant cursing in it.
Okay, then that's not nearly that bad. That's not nearly that bad. Anyways, yeah. So. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Simon, so much for coming back. And I will see you all later this week, hopefully, unless I fuck up again. And then I'll be 2 weeks behind on that one episode.
I'm your second guest again.
You're going back for a third. Ah!
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'll see you later. Hopefully, you'll see Simon again. And have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.